now on to the section that we're going to call Visions of Hope. So what I want to do is pick up the story of Rambert. So you might recall that Rambert was a journalist in Oran temporarily, and he had a wife in Paris who loved very much. And when the plague occurred, and the gates were closed, he began to spend his time looking for a way to be smuggled out, because he's desperate to return to his wife and afraid of what will happen if he is unable to get back to Paris to be with her. So then what happened in the second week of our conversation is that Rambert, although he's still committed to trying to escape, joins Rieu's, or Theroux's rather, sanitary squads, which are helping Rieu fight the plague. And so he continues to try and escape, but during the day he's working on behalf of this community in Oran. And so when we find him here in this third part, he's having a discussion with Rieu about about abandoning his attempts to escape. And Rieu is a little uncomfortable with this. And it actually kind of encourages him to continue to pursue his happiness, to continue to pursue this path of escape. And of course, what we know about Rieu is that his wife is outside of the city as well. And he feels tremendous love for her, and also is not trying to escape. He is committed to staying in Oran and fighting the plague. So when I'm going to begin here, and this conversation will go back and forth, hopefully you can follow me. It's on page 210 in my edition. The first narrator, of course, is going to be Rieu. He says, "Forgive me, Rambert, only, well, I simply don't know. But stay with us if you want to." A swerve of the car made him break off. Then, looking straight in front of him, he said, "For nothing in the world is it worth turning one's back on what one loves. Yet that is what I'm doing, though why I do not know." He sank back on the cushion. "That's how it is," he added wearily, "and there's nothing to be done about it. So let's recognize the fact and draw the conclusions." "What conclusions?" "Ah," Rieu said, "a man can't cure and know at the same time. So let's cure as quickly as we can. That's the more urgent job." So in this passage, we hear, as we did in the last section, this turn away from individual destiny or individual happiness towards the needs of the collective. And I think this message is particularly difficult to hear in America. There was a difference between hearing this in 1946, immediately after so much attention had been directed toward the needs of the collective, and hearing it in 2020, when American culture, at least American society, has not mobilized to fight a common existential threat or to achieve some common good, in anything akin to what happened during World War II. Again, it's really something that parallels here to hear the rhetoric in America in the last week around directing our attention back to a time when the majority of us alive were not here. So it is a difficult thing to hear here in America because of this notion of independence. I believe this is still true. Our governor in the state of Texas has still not issued a statewide stay-at-home order. Other southern governors have only just begun to do this in the last few days. So, independence. The pursuit of happiness understood individually here in this country. So my question is, what do we make of Rieu's statement that one can't cure and know at the same time? He's telling us, of course, that curing is the more important job. And as I read this passage, I was thinking about the impossible choices that healthcare professionals are being faced with now. Some states, I just read today, some states, I assume New York is one of them, have suspended the liability of physicians during the current moment for civil and criminal charges. And it's I think, a very important step to take, because they need to have the room to make these very difficult decisions. I'm wondering if this we can't cure and know is, in a sense, Camus suspending even the role of philosophy in facing a moment like this. Philosophy understood broadly, that what is more important is this elemental experience of connection with the whole and acting out of that place, rather than some rationally arrived at conclusion. As we've alluded to, Camus is suspicious of the ways in which rationally arrived at conclusions can lead to, horrific abuses, or taking on kinds of responsibility for acting in the world that is not ours to take on. So, for me, the most difficult passage of the book is what follows here. And it's in the pages, it's around 216, 217 in my edition of the book. This is the passage in which Monsieur Othon's son contracts the plague and dies. My son, our cameraman for the past few weeks, he's gotten the camera going for me. He's currently gone back inside to his iPad. He's playing a networked video game with his cousin. Danny's just a few months away from 12, and Monsieur Othon's son is 12 years old. This was hard for me to read 20 years ago. It has a different feeling now, of course, than it did then. I'm going to read quite a bit of it, actually, because I think it's all important. I'm not going to spend time, though, with too much time, though, with the actual death of the boy. It's worth noting as I begin this that many of the main characters, or most of the main characters, are present for this. Dr. Castel, Dr. Rambert, or not Dr. Rambert, the journalist Rambert, Theroux, who's the diarist, right? We haven't talked about him this week. Dr. Rieu, of course, and Father Panelou. And they're trying Dr. Castel's serum for the first time. The serum is a potential cure for the plague he's been working on. This boy is the first patient that they're going to try it on. And Camus will not let us escape the horrific reality of this child's death. So this is from the text. Again, this is about page 216. Panelou gazed down at the small mouth, fouled with the swords of the plague, and pouring out the angry death cry that has sounded through the ages of mankind. He sank on his knees, and all present found it natural to hear him say, in a voice hoarse but clearly audible across that nameless, never-ending wail, "My God, spare this child." And God does not spare the child, and the child dies in a horrible pain. And they let us know they know that the child actually likely suffered more because of the serum, because it did have some good effect, but not enough to save him. So after this, Rieu and Panelou have an encounter. And this I'm going to read at some length, because I think it gets right at the heart of what Camus is trying to communicate to us. Rieu lay back wearily on the bench. Gazing up at the ragged branches the shimmering sky, he slowly got back his breath and fought down his fatigue. He heard a voice behind him. Why was there anger in your voice just now? What we've been seeing was as unbearable to me as it was to you. Ryu turned toward Panaloo. I know, I'm sorry, but weariness is a kind of madness, and there are times when the only feeling I have is one of mad revolt. I understand, Panaloo said in a low voice. That sort of thing is revolting because it passes our human understanding. But perhaps we should love what we cannot understand. Ryu straightened up slowly. He gazed at Panaloo, summoning to his gaze all the strength and fervor he could muster against his weariness. Then he shook his head. No, Father, I have a very different idea of love. And until my dying day, I shall refuse to love a scheme of things in which children are put to torture. A shade of disquietude crossed the priest's face. Ah, Doctor, he said sadly, I've just realized what is meant by grace. Ryu had sunk back again on the bench. His lassitude had returned, and from its depths he spoke, more gently. It's something I haven't got, that I know, but I'd rather not discuss that with you. We're working side by side for something that unites us, beyond blasphemy and prayers, and it's the only thing that matters. Panaloo sat down beside Ryu. It was obvious that he was deeply moved. Yes, he said, you too are working for man's salvation. Ryu tried to smile. Salvation's much too big a word for me. I don't aim so high. I'm concerned with men's health, and for me his health comes first. Panaloo seemed to hesitate. Doctor, he began, then fell silent. Down his face, too, sweat was trickling. Murmuring, goodbye for the present, he rose. His eyes were moist. When he turned to go, Ryu, who had seemed lost in thought, suddenly rose and took a step toward him. Again, please forgive me. I can promise there won't be another outburst of that kind. Panaloo held out his hand, saying regretfully, and yet I haven't convinced you. What does it matter? What I hate is disease and death, as you well know. And whether you wish it or not, we're allies, facing them and fighting them together. Ryu was still holding Panaloo's hand. So you see, but he refrained from meeting the priest's eyes. God himself can't part us now.